The Declaration. The observation deck of Galactic Summit Station offered a view that most beings would call breathtaking. Stars stretched across the darkness like diamonds scattered on black velvet. 3 nearby nebulas painted the cosmic canvas in shades of purple and blue. Ships from 100 worlds docked at the station's massive ports. Gunnery Sergeant Ryan Mitchell barely noticed. He had seen enough of space over 23 years in the Marine Corps. Right now, he was more interested in the coffee machine that seemed designed for species with 3 hands and tentacles. He finally got the thing working and took a sip. Tasted like motor oil mixed with disappointment. Standard military coffee, apparently universal across the galaxy. Behind him in the grand conference chamber, humanity was having its second official meeting with the Galactic Council. The first meeting 6 months ago had gone well enough. Introductions, pleasantries, discussions about trade routes and cultural exchange. Today was supposed to be about establishing Earth's official status in galactic politics. Mitchell was not optimistic. He was part of the security detail, along with 24 other Marines. Their job was simple. Stand around, look professional, don't start any incidents. Mitchell had been doing this kind of duty for years. Embassies, diplomatic missions, peace conferences. It was boring work, but somebody had to do it. Through the transparent walls, he could see Ambassador Richard Carson gesturing enthusiastically at the assembled alien representatives. Carson was a career diplomat, smooth talker, believed in the power of words and negotiation. Mitchell respected that, even if he did not quite believe in it himself. The conference chamber held representatives from 47 different species. The luminary floated near the ceiling, beings of pure energy contained in crystalline shells. The depth dwellers sat in specialized water tanks, their tentacled forms moving with alien grace. The insectoid chittic clicked and chirped in their own section, their translation devices rendering their speech into dozens of languages. And then there were the Corvians. They dominated the center of the room, impossible to ignore. Supreme Commander Thrakos stood nearly 9 feet tall, his muscular frame covered in scales that shifted from deep blue to black depending on the light. His species had evolved as apex predators on a high-gravity world. They had conquered 83 star systems over the past 4 centuries. They were warriors, proud and fierce. They were also, in Mitchell's professional opinion, assholes. Thrakos had been talking for 20 minutes, his voice booming through the chamber. Mitchell could hear it even through the walls. The Corvian commander was not happy about Earth's petition to join the Galactic Council. Mitchell's comm unit crackled. It was Lieutenant Emma Reeves commanding the Marine Security Detail. "Mitchell, you seeing this?" "Watching it now, ma'am," he replied quietly. Thrakos is working himself into a rage. "Stay alert." "Always am, Lieutenant." Mitchell moved closer to the chamber entrance. Through the transparent aluminum walls, he could see Ambassador Carson trying to calm the situation. The other alien representatives looked uncomfortable. The luminary dimmed their light, and what Mitchell had learned was their equivalent of nervous fidgeting. Thrakos slammed one massive fist onto the conference table. The metal bent under the impact. "Humanity presumes too much," the Corvian commander roared. "You arrive in our galaxy with your primitive technology and expect to be treated as equals. You have no history of conquest, no tradition of warfare. You are prey species playing at being predators." Ambassador Carson raised his hands in a placating gesture. "Commander Thrakos, we come in peace. Earth has no desire for conquest. We simply wish to participate in galactic commerce and culture." "Peace?" Thrakos laughed, a sound like rocks grinding together. "Peace is what the weak call their cowardice. The Corvian Dominion has built an empire spanning 83 worlds. We have defeated species far stronger than yours. What have you accomplished?" Carson looked uncomfortable. "Humanity has survived and thrived on a challenging world. We have explored our solar system. We have developed faster than light travel independently. We have much to offer the galactic community." "You offer nothing," Thrakos spat. "Your military is untested. Your ships are outdated. Your soldiers are soft. I have reviewed your species' history. You fight amongst yourselves like animals. You have no honor, no discipline. You are not worthy of the Dominion's respect." Mitchell felt his jaw tighten. He had heard this kind of talk before. Insurgents in Syria who thought Marines were weak because Americans valued life. Pirates on Europa who thought Earth forces would not fight in harsh conditions. Corporate enforcers during the Martian border wars who believed mercenaries were tougher than regulars. They had all learned differently. The conference chamber doors suddenly opened. Threkos stormed out, followed by his entourage of Corvian warriors. Each one stood over 8 feet tall, armored in advanced combat suits that glinted in the station's artificial light. The Corvian commander stopped directly in front of Mitchell. Up close, Threkos was even more imposing. His scales rippled with bioelectric energy. His eyes were yellow with vertical slits, pure predator. His breath smelled like sulfur and burnt metal. You. Threkos pointed one clawed finger at Mitchell. You are a warrior of your species? Mitchell stood at attention. Gunnery Sergeant Ryan Mitchell, United States Marine Corps, sir. Marine Corps. Threkos repeated the words with contempt. I have read about your Marines. You claim to be elite fighters, yet your species has never faced real combat. You have never fought a war against an advanced civilization. You play at war among yourselves. Mitchell said nothing. His orders were clear. Do not engage. Do not escalate. Look at you, Threkos continued, standing there like a statue. No fire in your eyes. No warrior spirit. You are a toy soldier, decorative and useless. Behind the Corvian commander, Ambassador Carson emerged from the conference chamber. Commander, please, there is no need for hostility. We can resolve our differences through dialogue. Threkos ignored him. His attention remained fixed on Mitchell. I see weakness in your species, the Corvian said. Weakness in your diplomats who beg for peace. Weakness in your warriors who show no pride. This is unacceptable. The galaxy has no place for the weak. Mitchell could feel the tension building. Other Marines in the security detail were shifting position, hands moving closer to weapons. Lieutenant Reeves was speaking urgently into her comm, probably requesting backup or instructions. The other alien representatives had emerged from the conference chamber, watching the confrontation with obvious concern. The luminary pulsed with anxious light. The depth dwellers rippled in their tanks. Even the normally stoic Chittick seemed agitated. Threkos raised all 4 of his arms above his head. In Corvian culture, Mitchell knew this was a formal gesture. Something important was about to happen. By the ancient laws of the Corvian Dominion, Threkos declared, his voice carrying across the entire deck, I issue a blood challenge against the species known as humanity. Let the galaxy bear witness. The Corvian Empire declares war. We will demonstrate the cost of weakness. We will show the galaxy what happens to those who presume to stand among true warriors. The silence that followed was absolute. A blood challenge was the most serious action a Corvian could take. It was not a simple declaration of war. It was a promise of total destruction. The last species to receive a blood challenge had been erased from existence 300 years ago. Ambassador Carson looked like he might pass out. Lieutenant Reeves was shouting orders, organizing the Marines into defensive positions. The alien representatives erupted into panicked communication with their homeworlds. Through all of this, Mitchell remained exactly where he was, his expression unchanged. Threkos stared at him with undisguised rage. Do you not understand what I have just done? I have declared the annihilation of your species. Why do you not react? Where is your fear? Your anger? Your despair? You. Mitchell considered the question for a moment. He thought about the cigarettes in his pocket. He had quit smoking 5 years ago, but kept a pack on him out of habit. Old superstition from his early days in the Corps. Keep cigarettes on you, and you will never need them. He reached into his pocket slowly, keeping his movements visible so no one would think he was going for a weapon. He pulled out the crumpled pack and a lighter. Commander, Mitchell said calmly, I'm going to need to take a smoke break. The station seemed to freeze. Every being present, human and alien alike, stared at Mitchell in complete disbelief. Threkos's scales darkened to pure black, a sign of extreme fury in his species. I have just declared war on your entire civilization, and you want to smoke? Yes, sir, Mitchell replied. He had already tapped out a cigarette. Regulations say I need to use the designated smoking area. That's outside this section. I'll be back in 10 minutes. You mock me, Threkos snarled. You mock the Corvian Dominion. Not mocking anyone, sir. Just following regulations. Mitchell started walking toward the smoking area. His gait was unhurried, almost casual. Lieutenant Reeves moved to intercept him. Mitchell, what are you doing? Smoke break, ma'am. Be back shortly. The Corvians just declared war on Earth. Yes, ma'am, I heard. Still need that smoke break, though. He kept walking. Behind him, Threkos was shouting something about honor and insults. Ambassador Carson was trying to apologize or explain or something. The other Marines looked confused but stayed at their posts. Mitchell found the designated smoking area with its view of the stars. He lit his cigarette with hands that did not shake. He had been in enough bad situations to know that panic helped nothing. The Corvians had declared war. That was above his pay grade. His job was to stand guard. His job was to follow orders. His job was to be ready when the shooting started, because it always started eventually. The door slid open behind him. Mitchell did not turn around. He recognized the presence as non-threatening. The luminary Ambassador Solara floated into view. Her crystalline shell glowed with soft blue light. "Gunnery Sergeant Mitchell." Her voice was like wind chimes. "Do you understand what has happened?" "Yes, ma'am. The Corvians declared war on humanity. They have promised to destroy your species completely. Every world, every ship, every human life. This is not an empty threat. The Corvian military has never failed to fulfill a blood challenge." Mitchell took a drag from his cigarette. "Ma'am, with all due respect, that sounds like a them problem." Solara's light pulsed with what might have been confusion. "I do not understand. You are not afraid?" "Been afraid every day since I was 19 years old, ma'am. You get used to it. But the Corvians are far more powerful than your military. They have advanced weapons, experienced troops, and overwhelming numbers. Ma'am, I've fought in 3 solar system conflicts. I've seen action on Europa, Ganymede, and Mars. I've faced corporate armies, pirate fleets, and insurgent forces. Every single time we were outgunned, outnumbered, or fighting in impossible conditions." He flicked ash into the disposal unit. "Marines don't win because we're stronger or better equipped. We win because we don't quit. The Corvians will not quit either. They view this as a matter of honor. Then I guess we'll see who quits last." Solara was silent for a long moment. "Your species is very strange, Gunnery Sergeant." "Yes, ma'am, we've been told that before." Mitchell finished his cigarette and crushed it out. Time to get back to work. War had been declared, which meant everything was about to change. Orders would be coming down soon, probably deployment to one of the frontier colonies, probably combat operations within the month. He had done this before. He would do it again. As he walked back toward the conference area, he thought about something his old drill instructor had said 23 years ago. "Marines are not fearless. Marines are not invincible. Marines are just too stupid to quit." Thrakos and his Corvians were about to learn what that meant. The galaxy was about to witness something it had never seen before. Not because humanity was stronger or more advanced or more honorable than the species that had come before, but because humans had spent 10,000 years perfecting the art of war against themselves. The Corvians thought they were starting a fight. They were actually just joining one that had never really ended. The transport ship broke through New Horizons' atmosphere with a shudder that rattled every bolt in its frame. Gunnery Sergeant Ryan. Mitchell stood in the cargo bay with his Marines, watching through the viewport as the colony world came into view. New Horizon was not pretty. It was a mining world, all rust-colored rock and deep canyons carved by ancient rivers that had dried up millions of years ago. The settlements clung to the canyon walls like barnacles on a ship's hull. Massive excavation, equipment dotted the landscape, extracting rare minerals that made faster-than-light travel possible. 800,000 people called this place home. Miners, engineers, families who had come here for opportunities Earth could not provide. They worked hard, lived in prefab habitats, and dreamed of saving enough money to move somewhere nicer. Now they were in the path of a Corvian invasion fleet. "Listen up." Lieutenant Emma Reeves stood at the front of the bay. She was 32, sharp-featured, graduate of Annapolis. This would be her first real combat command. "Intel reports the Corvian fleet will arrive in 10 hours. We have 25 Marines to defend a colony of 800,000 civilians. Our mission is simple. Hold them off long enough for evacuation ships to extract the population." Corporal David Zhang raised his hand. He was 24, born on Luna, grew up in low gravity. Made him one of the best shots in the unit. "How long do we need to hold, ma'am?" 18 hours minimum, maybe more. The Marines absorbed this information in silence. 25 against a Corvian invasion force. The math was not good. Private Maria Santos spoke up. She was 19, fresh from boot camp 6 months ago. New Horizon was her first deployment. Lieutenant, how many Corvians are we expecting? Reeves looked at her datapad. Intelligence estimates 2,000 shock troops in the initial landing, more if they need reinforcements. Someone in the back whistled. Sergeant First Class Marcus Webb, 40 years old, veteran of the Martian border wars. Those are some real bad odds, ma'am. Yes, they are, Sergeant. Reeves looked at her Marines. Mitchell could see the weight on her shoulders. She was responsible for these men and women. Most of them would probably die in the next 24 hours. Anyone who wants to say something for the record, now's the time. Mitchell stepped forward. Permission to speak, Lieutenant. Go ahead, Gunny. Marines. Mitchell looked at the faces around him. Young and old, experienced and green, scared and trying not to show it. We've been given an impossible mission. We're outnumbered 80-1. We're fighting an enemy that's never lost a war. Command expects us to hold a position that can't be held. He paused. Let that sink in. So we're going to do what Marines always do. We're going to make the enemy pay for every inch of ground. We're going to use every dirty trick we know. We're going to fight smart, fight mean, and fight until the job is done. The Corvians think they're warriors. They're about to learn the difference between warriors and Marines. Private Santos raised her hand hesitantly. Gunny, what's the difference? Mitchell smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. Warriors have honor codes and rules. Marines have mission objectives. Warriors fight for glory. Marines fight to win. The transport touched down at New Horizons' main spaceport. The Marines grabbed their gear and moved out. Mitchell carried his rifle, a modern descendant of weapons that had served Earth's military for centuries. Reliable, simple, effective. The kind of tool that worked when fancy technology failed. Colony Administrator Chen Wei met them at the landing pad. She was 60 years old, gray hair tied back, face lined with worry. Thank God you're here. We've been trying to evacuate, but the civilian transports can only take 50,000 people at a time. We need multiple trips. How many trips? Reeves asked. At least 16, maybe 20. We'll buy you the time, Reeves promised. Chen Wei looked at the 25 Marines standing on her landing pad. That's all they sent? 25 soldiers to defend 800,000 people. Ma'am, Mitchell said quietly, it's not about how many we are. It's about how long we can hold. The next 8 hours were a blur of preparation. Mitchell had done this before, turning civilian territory into a battlefield. It was never pleasant, but it was necessary. They started with the terrain. New Horizons' main settlement sat in a canyon network, with only 3 main access routes from the open plains where the Corvians would likely land. The Marines mined those routes with every explosive they could scrounge from the mining equipment, not military-grade stuff, but mining charges designed to crack open asteroids. They would do the job. Corporal Zhang and 4 other Marines set up sniper positions on the canyon rim. Height advantage, clear lines of fire, multiple fallback positions. Classic infantry tactics older than spaceflight itself. Private Santos worked with Sergeant Webb to organize civilian volunteers. Every mining colony had former military among the population, people who had served their time and wanted a fresh start. They might be rusty, but they remembered how to hold a rifle. Lieutenant Reeves coordinated with the evacuation ships. The first transport lifted off with 50,000 civilians 6 hours before the Corvians arrived. Mostly children and elderly, the ones who could not fight even if they wanted to. Mitchell walked the perimeter alone, smoking another cigarette from his supposedly empty pack. He was thinking about Afghanistan, where he had served as a young corporal 20 years ago. Different enemy, different terrain, but the same basic problem. Not enough troops, not enough time, and people depending on you to do the impossible. He had been terrified then. He was terrified now, but fear was just another feeling like hunger or thirst. You acknowledged it and kept moving. Gunny, Zhang's voice crackled over the comm, got visual on the Corvian fleet. They're in orbit. Mitchell looked up. Even in daylight, he could see the massive warships blocking out the stars. Dreadnoughts, carriers, assault ships. Enough firepower to crack a planet, all units, Reeves transmitted. Enemy landing craft inbound. Eat to 10 minutes. Stay sharp, stay disciplined. Remember your training. The Corvian landing craft descended like meteors wrapped in flame. Atmospheric entry shields glowing white-hot, retro thrusters firing, battle formations perfect. They landed on the plains north of the canyon settlement, 200 craft disgorging their troops in coordinated waves. Mitchell watched through his scope from a concealed position. The Corvians emerged from their transports in full combat armor, weapons ready, moving with the precision of professional soldiers. They formed up in ranks, a massive force that stretched across the plain. At the center of the formation, a figure even larger than the rest. Supreme Commander Threkos himself, come to oversee humanity's destruction personally. A booming voice echoed across the canyon, amplified by Corvian technology. Humans of New Horizon, you face the judgment of the Corvian Dominion. Surrender now and your deaths will be swift. Resist and you will be erased from existence. You have 5 minutes to decide. Mitchell activated his comm. All units hold fire. Let them come to us. The 5 minutes passed in silence. No response came from the human settlement. The Corvians took this as defiance, so be it, Threkos declared. Forward. Show these prey what it means to face true warriors. The Corvian advance began. 2,000 troops moving in textbook formation, supporting each other, scanning for threats. They expected the humans to meet them in the open, to fight with some kind of honor. Instead, the canyon road exploded. Mining charges buried under the dirt detonated in sequence. The blasts were massive, designed to fragment rock at the molecular level. Corvian armor was advanced, but physics still applied. The front ranks disappeared in fire and shattered stone. Before the Corvians could recover, the shooting started. Rifle fire from the canyon rim, from hidden positions in the rocks, from firing ports in the settlement buildings. Every shot carefully aimed at weak points in armor, joints, visors, exposed systems. The Corvians returned fire with devastating energy weapons that vaporized rocks and melted metal. But they were shooting at ghosts. The Marines fired and moved, never staying in one position long enough to be targeted. What kind of warfare is this? Threkos roared. Where is your honor? Face us properly. Mitchell laughed quietly in his position. Honor was for species that could afford it. Marines fought to win. The Corvian advance slowed, became cautious. They spread out, used cover, moved tactically. Better, but it cost them time. Every minute was another minute for civilians to evacuate. 2 hours into the battle, the Corvians finally reached the settlement itself. Urban combat, building to building. The Marines fell back slowly, making the enemy fight for every structure. Booby traps in doorways, ambushes in alleyways, snipers firing from unexpected angles. Private Santos held a junction between 2 prefab buildings with 3 civilian volunteers. A Corvian squad tried to push through. Santos waited until they were in the kill zone, then detonated charges planted in the walls. The buildings collapsed inward, burying the squad under tons of rubble. Civilians are clear from Sector 3, she reported, already falling back to the next position. Corporal Zhang had been firing from the same position for 90 minutes, taking careful shots at Corvian officers. He had killed 17 before they finally spotted him. Energy bolts tore apart his cover, forcing him to abandon the position. He pulled back to his secondary position and kept shooting. Sergeant Webb led a counterattack on the eastern flank, hitting a Corvian supply column with everything he had. The attack lasted 4 minutes before he pulled his team out. Cost the Corvians ammunition and supplies, cost Webb 2 Marines. The battle raged for 8 hours. The Corvians controlled half the settlement, but had suffered hundreds of casualties. The humans had lost 9 Marines and 60 civilian volunteers. The evacuation continued. Supreme Commander Threkos stood in what had been a schoolyard, now a battlefield. Bodies lay everywhere, human and Corvian. His armor was scorched from a near miss. His rage was absolute. These humans fight like animals, one of his officers reported. No honor, no discipline. They use civilian buildings as fortresses. They booby-trap everything. They refuse to face us directly. Then we shall show no mercy, Threkos decided. Orbital bombardment. Destroy the settlement, the order went out. The warships in orbit powered up their main weapons. Then the sensors detected new contacts. Ships dropping out of hyperspace. Human vessels, not the entire fleet, but enough. Enough to threaten the Corvian warships. Enough to make orbital bombardment impossible without abandoning the ground forces. Admiral Patricia Morrison's voice came over all frequencies. Corvian forces, this is the United Earth Navy. You are engaged in an illegal invasion of sovereign human territory. Withdraw immediately or face military action. Threkos realized the trap. The humans had sacrificed ships and soldiers not to win but to buy time. Time for civilians to evacuate. Time for reinforcements to arrive. Time to turn a massacre into a stalemate. In the settlement, Mitchell received the transmission. The last evacuation ship was lifting off, packed with the final group of civilians. The Marines had held for 18 hours and 40 minutes. All units, Lieutenant Reeves transmitted. Her voice was hoarse from shouting orders. Mission accomplished. Civilians are clear. Begin extraction to designated pickup zones. The surviving Marines pulled back through pre-planned routes. The Corvians pursued but cautiously now, aware that every step might lead to another trap. Mitchell was the last one out, covering the withdrawal. He found himself face to face with a Corvian warrior in a destroyed building. The warrior was wounded, sitting against a wall. Mitchell could have shot him easily. Instead, he lowered his weapon slightly. "War's over for you, friend. Stay down and you'll live." The Corvian stared at him. "You fight without honor." "We fight to win," Mitchell corrected. "There's a difference." He left the warrior there and moved to the extraction point. A Marine dropship descended through fire and smoke, loading the survivors. Mitchell climbed aboard, took a seat, and finally allowed himself to feel the exhaustion. 16 Marines had survived. 9 had died. 300 Corvian casualties. 800,000 civilians evacuated safely. Supreme Commander Thrakos stood in the ruins of New Horizons settlement, surrounded by his troops. They had taken the objective, but it felt like defeat. The humans had outfought them not with superior technology or numbers, but with sheer bloody-minded determination. Thrakos thought about the human sergeant who had shrugged off his declaration of war, who had asked for a smoke break, who had fought for almost 19 hours without surrendering or breaking. For the first time in his long military career, Thrakos understood what it meant to be afraid. The human fleet arrived in force 6 hours later, dozens of warships, supported by carrier groups and support vessels. They did not attack immediately. They simply took position around New Horizon and waited. A transmission came from the flagship. Admiral Morrison's face appeared on screens across the Corvian fleet. "Commander Thrakos, you declared war on humanity. You promised to destroy us. How's that working out for you?" Thrakos had no answer. "Here's what's going to happen," Morrison continued. "You're going to withdraw your forces from New Horizon. You're going to return to Corvian space, and you're going to think very carefully about whether you want to continue this war, because if you do, we'll show you what humans are really capable of. And trust me, Commander, you don't want that." The Corvian fleet withdrew. On the flagship's bridge, Gunnery Sergeant Mitchell stood watching the enemy retreat. He had been given a commendation, a promotion opportunity, and more responsibilities he did not want. He was smoking a cigarette, technically against regulations on a warship, but Admiral Morrison had decided to overlook it. "Gunny," the Admiral said, joining him at the viewport, "that was one hell of a stand you made down there." "Just did our jobs, ma'am. You held an impossible position with inadequate forces against overwhelming odds. That's not just doing your job. That's being a Marine." Mitchell took a drag from his cigarette. "Ma'am, with all due respect, that's the only kind of job Marines ever get." Morrison smiled. "You think the Corvians will come back?" "Eventually. They're warriors. They don't like losing, and will be ready." Mitchell looked at the stars, at the vast darkness that held a million threats and opportunities. Humanity had finally stepped onto the galactic stage. They had announced themselves not with words or diplomacy, but with blood and determination. The galaxy was learning what Mitchell had always known. Humans did not quit. Humans did not surrender. Humans did not follow anyone's rules but their own. "Ma'am," Mitchell said finally, "we're always ready." Behind them, New Horizon floated in space, scarred but intact. The Corvian fleet disappeared into hyperspace, carrying the story of their defeat. And across the galaxy, other species listened and learned. The humans were not strong because they had the best weapons or the largest armies. They were strong because they simply refused to lose. Supreme Commander Thrakos sat in his flagship, staring at casualty reports. 300 warriors lost, thousands more wounded. The pride of the Corvian Dominion bloodied by a handful of humans. He thought about the sergeant with the cigarettes. The one who had not shown fear or anger or any emotion except tired acceptance. The one who had fought like war was just another job to be done. Threkos finally understood. Humans were not warriors. Warriors fought for honor and glory. Humans fought because someone needed fighting. They fought in caves and cities, in space and on planets, in any condition and against any odds. They fought because that was what they did. The blood challenge had been issued. The war would continue. But for the first time in Corvian history, Threkos wondered if his species had made a terrible mistake. The humans were not prey. They never had been.